Hey friendlies, I'm Carolyn and welcome back to my life living in an RV. A couple months ago, my RV life took me to Baja, Mexico. I was there for 2 months and a lot of you have asked for a breakdown of the costs involved in traveling and RVing throughout Baja. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to break down the cost by category for gas, propane, eating out, groceries. I'm also going to compare it to what I would have spent not going to Baja, just my normal, regular RV life in the United States. And then at the end of the money part, the budgeting part, I'm going to answer a couple questions many of you have had about traveling to Baja.
There ain't nobody gonna do it for you. Got to mind your own.
So I was in Baja for like pretty much exactly 2 months, and I'm going to first tell you what I spent on this line item in Baja. I'm then going to tell you what I probably would have spent in the US. First line item, of course, is gas. Gas is much more expensive in Mexico. In fact, gas is much more expensive in every country I have ever visited than it is in the United States. Much more expensive. It was more expensive in Mexico, it's more expensive in Canada, it's more expensive in every European country I've ever been to, and so gas is always higher outside of the United States. We're pretty lucky here to pay the gas prices that we do, especially recently. So gas, for 2 months, I was there pretty much exactly 2 months, and my gas spend was $927. We went from El Centro to Mulegé and then turned around. So it's approximately 1,100 miles there and back. Of course, we did side trips. We went back and forth and back and forth. So I don't know, maybe best case scenario or best guess, it was 1,500 miles. And I figured the same spend in the United States would have been about 650. Gas was pretty close to $5 a gallon. Most places or more in Baja, and where I'm averaging, I think, about 370, 376 lately here. So the difference in gas, and that's a 2 month spend. Actually, that's not a month to month, that's a mile to mile comparison. I figured I drove about 1,500 miles in Baja, and to drive 1,500 miles in the United States, it would have cost me about $650. So the difference there just in gas is almost $300. The difference is $277. Now I want to tell you about the Waggle Pet Monitor, who has been a wonderful partner and sponsor to this channel. It's a perfect companion for anybody who travels with their pets. It's more important than ever to have a device like the Waggle Pet Monitor, who is sponsoring today's video, in your RV, van, or vehicle so that you know your pet is safe as you travel together across the country or even just to the store. The Waggle Pet Monitor is a must-have for anyone who lives in an RV or just loves to travel with their fur baby. You put this inside your vehicle and it's going to tell you in real time what the temperature is, what the humidity is, and what the heat index is. And you can also set up alerts. So say you want to know if it gets above 80 degrees at home or in your car, you'll get an alert on your phone so that you know right away that the temperature has reached a critical point and you need to get back to your RV. One of the other things I really love about the Waggle Pet Monitor is that it'll let you know if you have a power outage. So many of you know you put your pet in your RV, in an RV park, when you're plugged in, you leave the air conditioning on, and you're always wondering, oh my gosh, did the power go out? Well, the Waggle Pet Monitor will let you know. It'll also let you know if the power goes back on. So if you're on your way home and you're like, oh, the power went back on, so I don't have to worry about it. So there's a lot of security built in so that you can have peace of mind when you're living your life, running your errands, going out and seeing the sights. You're always going to know that your pet is safe inside your mobile residential vehicle, no matter where you are. And now Waggle Pet Monitor is offering the best deal I've ever seen. 70% off the Waggle Pet Monitor. Just use the link in the video description below with discount code SADIE70 and get 70% off. Thank you so much, Waggle, for sponsoring today's video, and especially just for keeping my fur baby safe and giving me peace of mind. The next line item is propane. I use propane in my RV to run my refrigerator, to run my heater. Of course, I didn't need to run that in Baja, I don't think at all. To run my stove, and my water heater, which I don't use hardly ever, hardly ever. If I need to boil water for dishes, I boil it on the stove. I don't use my water heater. And of course, if I take a shower in my RV, but I usually don't. I usually take my showers elsewhere and just bathe in my RV. But anyway, propane, and I think I got propane 3 times in Mexico. So I also included in my cost of traveling in Mexico, I included fees for things that I had to do to supply up to go. So for example, I filled up on propane before I left for Mexico in the United States, but I used that propane in Mexico. So I included that cost in what it costs to travel to Mexico. Spent $108 on 3 propane fill-ups, and I would have spent about the same here. It was very reasonable. Water and dump fees in Mexico were about $100 for 2 months. We paid a lot more for water and dump, mostly because we had to pay for water because you need clean, purified drinking water. You just can't drink city water out of the ground like you do here. Like here, most of the time I go to a dump station, it's $10 and it includes water, city water. There, we had to pay to dump, and there's a little bit of a gringo tax on that. You know, they know that they have a captive audience in Americans who go down there in their RVs, so it's a little higher. And water, of course, was separate because we had to buy purified drinking water. I think every single water and dump I paid cash. So this is my best guesstimate based on my memory and especially water, because oftentimes, I mean all the time too, we're paying in pesos, so trying to do that translation quickly in your head when you're paying cash is a little challenging. So it's like, okay, here's 2,000 pesos, and then you're like, wait a minute, how much was that? So some of these are my best guesstimates, but for water and dump for 2 months, I'm estimating, based on the cost that I remember things being, I think it was about $100. I fill up water and dump about every 10 days, every 2 weeks. Here, that would have cost me about $40, so that's a $60 difference. Campgrounds. We stayed at 2 different campgrounds when we were in Baja. The first campground was San Felipe. We stayed there for 3 nights. It was $25 a piece. And then on the way back up, we stayed at the Shark Tank. I don't even remember the tiny little town that was in north of Mulegé. That was $16 a night. We stayed there 4 nights. So the total cost of campgrounds for us for a week, for 7 days, was $139. Not bad. The cost for campgrounds here, I don't stay in campgrounds here unless I'm traveling cross country, but in my normal average everyday life, I don't pay for campgrounds, so that cost is usually $0 for me. So that's a $139 difference. Groceries. So this is an interesting number. I spent $659 on groceries while I was in Mexico. Again, I paid for groceries a lot of times with cash, not all the time. A lot of times I went into these little itty bitty markets, roadside stand. I bought oranges once and olives, I think. And also, we're going to get to eating out next, but I ate out a lot more than I normally do. So groceries are extremely high in Baja for a lot of things that we're used to getting. They're really high. But I wasn't really buying as much, and I was not buying the same things I buy in the United States because things are different down there. I couldn't find a lot of the premium things that I'm used to. So at the end, I'm going to talk about what you might want to stock up on to take with you. Some of the things that were a little challenging or extremely expensive to buy there. But the grocery, for 2 months, I spent $659 US on groceries. Normally in the US, in that same time period, I'd probably spend closer to $1,100. And that's because I buy premium things in the US that I couldn't get in Mexico. I supplied up on a lot of my favorite things. Oatmeal, beans, there's a lot of things I supplied up on before I left. I did not include my pre-supply up grocery bill in this like I did gas. So while a lot of groceries are more expensive, coffee is very expensive, paper towels. Sarah and Aaron tried to buy like a 12-pack of paper towels and got to the checkout and it was like $48 for a pack of, I think it was 12 Kirkland. So things can be very expensive. And again, we'll talk about what to supply up on. So that grocery bill sounds a little low to me. only because I was not buying the normal premium things that I can buy. And also fresh produce in a lot of the places we went wasn't great. It was kind of hard to find. Some of the major grocery stores, it was a little bit better, but the little out of the way stores, it's a challenge to find fresh produce. And of course you can't cross the border with fresh produce. Eating out, $323, and I ate out a lot for me. I never eat out. In fact, my U.S. spend on eating out is zero. I very rarely, in my normal everyday life, I hardly ever eat out, partly because I am a plant-based, gluten-free diet, and that makes it extremely challenging. So I'll only eat out if I go to a big city and can find a nice vegan restaurant. And we did eat at some expensive places. Mulegé Brewing was expensive. The other place in Mulegé, the hotel, that was an expensive meal. So we did have a lot of expensive meals and things. Honestly, eating out is not as cheap there as you might think. And it was very rare that even tacos, street tacos were like $5. So eating out there is not as inexpensive as you might think. Souvenirs. Again, I paid cash for most souvenirs. The shop owners prefer that you pay cash. It's just less fees for them. So I'm estimating, trying to go around and say, okay, what did I buy? I bought this. That was $50. I spent about $400, I'm guessing, on souvenirs. And that includes souvenirs for friends and family. That includes things that I brought back for me. I brought back t-shirts and stickers and a couple gifts and a bag. Vanilla. I got a couple different things of vanilla. So I'm estimating I spent about $400 on souvenirs. Again, it was all cash. So I had to look at how much cash I had and just kind of try to figure out where all that cash went. I took about $919 out in cash, by the way. So I went through about $1,000 in cash. I guess I'll go ahead and, well, it doesn't matter. I had a total of about $1,100, but I came home with $200. I still have $200 in cash in pesos. So I spent $919 in cash in Mexico. And a lot of these fees that I'm talking about, all of that cash went toward them. Cash ATM fees were about $24. So I took out $1,900 in cash, according to my bank. I don't know how much of that went toward Mexican bank fees. All I'm going by are what my bank charged me. I might have taken out $919 in cash, but I might have only gotten $870. And I don't know that because I don't have my receipts, but the ATM fees in Mexico can be very high. The $24 is just what my bank charged me. I used 2 or 3 different cards. I think Capital One didn't charge me anything. I think my bank did. So $24 in cash fees. Insurance. So you have to get auto insurance through a Mexican auto insurance company. Your U.S. Mexico coverage is not good enough. If you get in an accident and that's all you have, you're in big trouble. You have to get insurance through a Mexican insurance company. We used Baja Bound. It was the most reasonable one that I found, I think, and easiest to sign up for. I went ahead and got a 6-month policy because it was only a few dollars more, can't remember, to get a 6-month policy versus like a 90-day policy. So it was $331 in Mexican insurance for that 2 months. It was a 6-month policy on top of my regular U.S. insurance. So I'm calling that in the U.S. I wouldn't have bought Mexico insurance, so there would be no expense there on that line item in the U.S. FMM fees. So we did have to pay $42 for the visa to go in. A lot of controversy about whether or not you need that. Nobody ever asked us for it, or I don't think anybody. Oh wait, I think we might have been asked for it once. A lot of people on the groups that I see on Facebook say, "Oh, we never got one. Oh, we never got one." Great, it's $42. It was easy enough to get. I'd rather have it and not need it than not have it and need it and get in trouble. So we paid. We went in and got the FMM and paid for it. No issue. Miscellaneous costs. Those were on my credit card. Things that I couldn't identify because they're Mexican names and they're not very explanatory. But there were miscellaneous costs on my credit card of about $104. Oh, I think that also includes some cash that was unaccounted for. Like I had a few dollars in cash left unaccounted for. So just miscellaneous things I couldn't figure out were about $100. So my total spend for 2 months in Mexico was $3,158. $3,158 in 2 months. So that averages about $1,578 a month. And what I figured is for those same line items, now you'll notice there's no phone in here because that's just a constant for me. I pay that all the time. Starlink, I pay all the time. I'm only doing this for extra expenses that I had in Mexico and comparing them to those same expenses here in the US. So for those line items, it cost me about $1,578 a month in Mexico. Those same things would have cost me about $930 in the US. And the extra expenses were the propane, were the water and dump, were the campgrounds, were eating out, souvenirs. So I don't really know that you can do a proper comparison because I don't usually buy souvenirs in the US. But anyway, for 2 months in Baja, it pretty much covers everything. But I mean, a phone bill and my regular RV insurance. But it cost me $31.57.81 to travel and live in Baja for 2 months. That's not bad. That's not $1,500 a month. That's not bad. All right, so I think I covered everything. About $918 in cash, and I separated out the cash by line item. It included in all of these, like the campgrounds were all cash. None of the campgrounds we paid for with cards. So for 2 months, I went through about $1,000 in US dollars in cash. I tried to never buy gas with cash, so I don't think there were any gas there. I think I paid for propane once with cash. You really need, it's a very cash heavy society. You really need to make sure if you have a chance to stock up on pesos, do so if you're going to be there a while. All right, so now let's talk about the questions you all had. First, why don't we talk about things that you might want to stock up on before you go. Dairy-free milk was really, really easy to find everywhere. Everywhere had dairy-free milk. They also always had a really good selection. Pretty much everywhere except for maybe the tiniest stores had really good selection of gluten-free stuff. Really good selections of gluten-free. The only thing Sarah and Aaron couldn't find was oat milk. I think they found it at the Lay's or whatever, the big grocery store in San Felipe. But other than that, oat milk was really hard to find. But if you don't mind soy or almond, it's everywhere. But if you want if you want hemp, or if you want soy, if you want oat, stock up on that before you go. Stock up on your paper goods, toilet paper, coffee filters, paper towels. All of those were very expensive. Coffee filters were ridiculous. What did I say? $10 I think I showed, or $8 I think for a package of 40 cone filters in the small grocery store in Mulegé. I think it was Mulegé that I bought. So stock up on all your paper goods, any RV treatments, anything that you might need for your RV for maintenance or repair. Try to carry that with you. Didn't see any shops down there. I needed one solar thing. I was able to get it at AutoZone. But peanut butter was extremely expensive. I paid $10 for a Kirkland peanut butter. And it should have been a 2-pack for $10. I paid $10 for one. So nut butters, stock up on those. Of course, you can't take meat, even if it's frozen, over the border. Of course, they didn't check going into Mexico. They didn't even ask. But they did ask, of course. Remember, I had to go to import jail. Crossing the border into the U.S. because I had oranges and avocados. So I had to go to import jail before I could cross. So you don't want to come back with anything, but you're also not supposed to go into into Mexico with any frozen meat, fresh meat, any produce. So all the dry goods that you can supply up on, do so ahead of time. Canned goods, it's really hard to find canned beans. I use a lot of canned beans. Dry beans are all over the place. So if you don't mind cooking them up from dry, that's no problem. But canned beans were really hard to find. They had a lot of the things tailored to Americans. There were so many Americans in Baja. So I think like oat milk, I couldn't find any tofu the whole time I was there. So if tofu is, or I did once and it was bad. So if tofu is a part of your diet, you might want to buy a bunch and put it in your freezer. Meat is really easy to find. All kinds of meat is really easy to find everywhere. Produce, like I said, can be a little challenging. Prescriptions. Oh, I had a pharmacy. Oh, I don't know what happened. I had a pharmacy line item here, but that's part of miscellaneous. I just bought some fun things at the pharmacy. Something with peyote in it or something. Some peyote, like, gel for your muscles or something, and we ended up throwing that away because we couldn't cross the border with it. If you need to bring any prescriptions or anything like that, the language barrier can be really hard to find certain prescriptions. I know that I tried to find fluconazole for Sadie a couple of times, and I got fluconazole once, and the second time I did not get fluconazole. I got something else. So that's another word of advice. I ran out of fluconazole for her the other day, and I pulled out what I bought in Mexico, and I'm like, what is this? And I looked it up, and it is not fluconazole. So I'm glad I looked it up before I gave it to her. So just be very wary of what you buy. They don't always know what you mean by a brand name or even a non-brand name of a pharmaceutical. So be careful with that. You might want to bring extra water containers so that you can fill up extra water containers when you're at the Purificado stations. And we drink a lot of Topo Chico. So if you're addicted to LaCroix like Sarah and I are, there's not a lot of LaCroix down there, but we quickly got used to Topo Chico. And in fact, I think I might like it a little bit better. Let me see, what else? Dog food. I took a whole, whatever it is, 40, 50 pound bag of Science Diet down with me because that's what Sadie eats. You can buy dog food down there, just not probably your brand, what you're used to getting. Coffee. I would take coffee. If you're particular about your coffee like I am. We were able to find coffee down there, but it was really hit or miss. And because I'm a coffee snob, I would end up buying bags of coffee that I didn't like. So if you're pretty particular, go ahead and bring your favorite brand. That way, if you want to sample some of the local coffees, you can, but you're not going to be out of luck with the coffee you love. You know what I mean? So, in fact, I brought a whole bag back with me and gave it away. I think that's about it. Snacks are really, of course, snacks are everywhere. Baked goods, bakeries are everywhere. And in fact, my eating out cost included all the bakeries, all the convenience stores. No, all the convenience stores and sodas and snacks along the way. I actually put in my grocery bucket. My grocery budget. All right, so now to your questions. Would I recommend a newbie RVer going to Baja? And somebody else asked me, would I suggest somebody going alone to Baja? So the newbie question, I think that totally depends on your comfort level and how well you travel in uncertainty. Sarah and Aaron and Ralph and most of us in the group were been on the road a long time, very used to traveling full time, and all of the challenges that go with traveling full time and being on the road and boondocking and finding, services and everything. Most of us were all of us were very used to that. You add the language barrier on top of that, and you add the money challenges on top of that. I think the thing that frustrated us the most was the language barrier. When we needed help, when we needed to find something, even sometimes just by the end, it was like even ordering a meal was exhausting. And we were there 2 months. We were there a long time. So it makes sense that we got a little tired. It's not like when I traveled to Europe and I was there for 3 weeks and it's like, oh, new language, this is so fun. After a while living that way, it gets tiring. So I would suggest, should you go if you're a newbie RVer? Probably not. Honestly, I think you need to get your feet wet in the U.S. as far as how your RV works, when you're going to need propane, when you're going to need to dump, how to fill up your water. Again, if you're very adaptable and you love a challenge and you thrive under uncertainty and challenge, maybe. I think, though, that if you're a newbie RVer, actually there's a lot that goes in this. If you're just going to be staying in RV parks, that takes some of the challenge out of it as well. I think you just have to assess your skills, honestly, and how you're going to do with the language barrier and the money barrier and the windy, narrow roads that can be really scary and really intimidating. If you're just brand new to driving an RV and you're still unsure, no. So I think that's a really hard question for me to answer. I think you just have to take all the information that's out there that I have provided, watch all my videos about some of the roads and some of the challenges we faced, and just be honest with yourself. Now, if you're a solo experienced RVer, go, do it. I never felt scared. I mean, of course, I was part of a group the whole time, but there are plenty of solo women who go, and you have to have some street smarts for sure. Have a little common sense, have some street smarts, be aware of your surroundings, but you also can't be somebody who's afraid of their own shadow. That's not going to do well for any kind of travel. In fact, most people who are afraid of their own shadow don't go anywhere. So I think it's perfectly safe for someone to go alone. Just be aware of your surroundings, put on your street smarts. All right. And would I go back? I would. In retrospect, was it worth the stress and uncertainties and the hardships? So we didn't really have any hardships. I got stuck the first night there. I've gotten stuck more times than I can count here in the United States in my RV. So I don't feel like we had any hardships. I feel like we had some challenges and stress and uncertainty. I have that in my everyday RV life in the United States. The only extra barrier really that was challenging was the language barrier. And that's just part of travel. That's part of the experience. And I would definitely do it again. I mean, there was nothing that we went through or that we faced that was a deal breaker for being there or wanting to be there or going back. And in fact, I hope you go back if you haven't watched the videos and watch them. There were so many positive things about being there and getting a different perspective from south of the border about how they live and how their lifestyle and their take on life. And I think we could all agree, definitely for me, what I got out of that trip far outweighs any of the challenges that we faced. I like this question. We live between Tijuana and Ensenada on the Pacific coast. Why are so many RVers traveling down the Sea of Cortez? That was only supposed to be the first half of our trip, at least in my mind. We never really discussed an itinerary because that's not how we roll. We're all like, okay, we'll just go and we all travel the same. It's like, okay, we're going to go and, we'll stay here and then we'll figure it out from there. And then from there, we'll figure out our next step. That's how we all travel. My thought was, though, and I think we were pretty much on the same boat of this, is that we would travel down the Sea of Cortez because we wanted to start in San Felipe because that's the border crossing we did in El Centro, Mexicali. We ended up landing on that being the easiest and safest place for us to cross, and it just made sense for us to go to San Felipe from there. The goal when we set out was to go to Cabo and come back up, and I wanted to come back up the West Coast. I think that's what we were going to do, but 2 months it took us to get to Mulegé, and we were done by then. We're like, you know what? Okay, we got tired. It's tiring. I mean, like I said in the last one, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't trade that experience for anything, and regular RV life is challenging, but it's almost like doing a road trip. You're constantly in the unknown, and most of us like to boondock, not stay in campgrounds and RV parks. So the added stress of trying to find that constantly, because we were always on the move, and I think always dealing with people too, I think for a lot of us was a lot. And again, the language barrier and the different culture. In the beginning, it's all exciting and new, and then after a while, all you want to do is live and be quiet and have some solitude, and the culture is different, so we weren't able to find that. So those were some of the challenges that we faced that, you know, maybe cut our trip a little bit shorter, but we also traveled a lot slower, I think, than any of us thought we would, because we just kept finding awesome places to enjoy. The other question someone had is, if I don't want to travel to Baja alone, how do I find a group to travel with? If you're on Facebook, there are Baja travel groups all over the place. There's a group called Baja RVing and Camping. There's On the Road in Mexico. But I know, especially Baja RVing and Camping, I'm constantly seeing caravans. So big, huge caravans go down there. I think maybe even escapees, if you join that here in the U.S., they might have a trip to Baja every year. They might. But those two Facebook groups I know definitely have caravans. Big, huge ones. All right, and finally, the last question I'm going to answer is about taking dogs across the border, pets across the border, because Sarah and Aaron had a cat, and Edie and Cindy also had a cat and a dog. 2 cats and a dog. We came back across the border into the U.S. in March. Everything was still the old way, I think. Gosh, I don't even think they asked to see her rabies certificate. I don't think anybody ever asked to see rabies certificate, although I carried it, so you always have to carry it. So there are new laws going into effect in the United States as of August 1st about bringing a pet across the border. So it's not going to be nearly as easy as it was last year. I'm not going to get into that on this video. I'm going to talk about it in the next video. Next Sunday, I'm doing a frequently asked questions. So I'm going to answer all your questions about everything that doesn't have to do with Baja next week. And I'm going to talk about the new rules for crossing the border with a pet and how it's going to affect my trip to Canada. So I got another big announcement next week, so tune in for that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. I appreciate you all so much for being here and supporting my work. If you like my content, please subscribe to my channel below and click that bell for notifications so you never miss a video. I put one out every week. Also, just a quick reminder, our friend and community member Richard Thomas's mother was flooded out of her house by a flood about 10 days ago, and I am helping them raise money through their GoFundMe account. We've already raised more than $5,000, but we're just a little over halfway to their goal. I wanted to double their goal. So if you have just a couple pennies to spare, go ahead and check out the GoFundMe and help his mom. She's going to have to do a lot. They don't know still if they're going to be able to stay in the house. I think he said FEMA hasn't showed up. Red Cross came, took pictures, and they haven't seen them since. So they're cleaning up the house. The floors are a disaster. The walls it's a disaster. So if you can help in any way, please consider contributing to their GoFundMe. I'll put a link in the video description below. Thank you all so much. I'll see you next Sunday. In the meantime, be happy, be free, and be kind. I'll see you soon.